Hello, today is Introduction to JavaScript, and this is an exciting day packed with new learnings, and it's the starting point for a really fun journey we're all gonna go on together. So I'm excited. The content I'm gonna cover is first a little bit of what is JavaScript, then we're gonna dive into coding, figuring out where to write JavaScript, what functions are, what the so-called document object is, and how we can use JavaScript to manipulate and make interactive and add functionality to HTML elements. Finally, we cover whatever this means, DOM versus BOM. And if you make it all the way through, I will reward you with an extra bonus feature in the end that I'm sure that many of you will find exciting enough to use in your own projects. So bear with me. Starting off, what is JavaScript? Let's have a quick look to get an overview about the languages that we already know and the one that we're about to learn. That is HTML, CSS, and JavaScript. As you know, HTML is used for the content, so the actual things that we see on the page are written in HTML. Those things are then styled in CSS. And JavaScript apparently is adding interactivity or behavior to our page. To understand this better, what I would like to do is quickly show you the 3 Wikipedia articles and point something out to you that I find quite interesting. So here's the HTML article on Wikipedia, and it says HTML is a markup language. Then here's the CSS article and says CSS is a style sheet language. Finally, the JavaScript article is saying that JavaScript is a programming language. So I thought this was interesting because so far we have not actually yet written any programming languages. And the way that I understand what a programming language is that programming languages are used to write programs. And what are programs as opposed to what we have written so far? What we've written so far looked like code and is some kind of code, but it is interpreted once and then rendered on the page, right? The browser reads your HTML, the browser reads your CSS, takes it all in, and produces the website with the styling that we want. As opposed to this, a program is a process that is continuous, so that keeps on running, right? A program is running. That means in the context of a website, JavaScript, which constitutes a program, is something that keeps on running as long as the website is open. That means for the entire time that the website is open, the JavaScript program can do things and surprise us with things and react to our input to the website. And that's the reason why a programming language is needed to make the web interactive or truly interactive. Of course, there's some interactive seeming features in CSS as well, like hover or animations, but JavaScript is a full programming language that actually lets us write programs that run in the back of our page. Okay, that was more than I wanted to say, so let's move on. Oh, there's one more slide that I wanted to see, is there? Let's have a look quickly. There was slide number 20. Just as a recap, HTML, CSS, markup language, style sheet language, content and style, versus JavaScript is a programming language which adds behavior, which I spelled wrong here, and interactivity to the page. I will correct this by the time that you look at the slides yourself. All right, moving on. Let's start coding. I prepared exercise files with you that have some code prepared. You can download them in the link below the video on YouTube or on a link that we'll put on the Communications Lab website as well. So let's have a quick look at the files that I provided. We have an index.html file, a folder CSS with a style sheet, and 2 images in an assets folder. In the index.html, what do we see? We see a div here with an ID of header. Note I'm using an ID here, not a class. for reasons that will become apparent later on, but also because I'm confident that there will be only one header. I'm not suddenly adding another header. That is important because only one element on any page should have a specific ID. No other element is allowed to have the ID header, and no other element than this is allowed to have the ID headline. Then there's a button, which might be a new element for some of you, but it's promising fun. And there's yet another div called main, within which we have an image and a p caption tag for the image. Let's have a look how this looks. It's right here. Let's keep it that small because we want to see most we can of our code. Here we have the welcome and the button, which is the header together. And we have the main content below, which is the image and the caption. It's a classic website of a moon on the of a dog on the moon. So let's see. There's one more thing that I wanted to say. In programming languages, we often talk about scripts that we are writing. Scripts are nothing else but the code of a programming language, and it takes the form of statements that are instructions that the computer can read one by one in order to produce a result. One analogy would be a food recipe where we write down instructions, and whoever follows those instructions step by step will end up with a great meal. Just like the browser following our instructions step by step will end up with a great experience on our website. Okay, moving on to where to write JavaScript. And this is similar to what we encountered in CSS. There's 3 different options of where to write JavaScript: inline, in tag, and in an external script. And I will now show you all of these options. So let's dive right in. First is inline. Inline means writing CSS or JavaScript within a HTML tag. So I'm going to do this right here in the button. And we're going to write on click equals double quotes alert parentheses single quotes hello exclamation point. I'll save this and we can speculate what this will do already. It's a button and we say on click alert hello. Let's see if our expectation is met. If I click on the Woof button, an alert shows up that says hello. Alerts are used to convey things that we think the user of or the visitor of our website must see. I want to quickly hold on here before I go to the in tag way of writing JavaScript to point out 3 things. One, this really is an attribute of an element tag, right? Just like we've seen other attributes before, like ID or href. These are all attributes of HTML tag. This is nothing else. Instead, that this attribute unlocks for us to write JavaScript code in these 2 quotes. The next 2 things I want to point out is that pretty much all the promises that, that I made about what JavaScript will add to our websites are already met at this very point. That is behavior and interaction. Behavior comes from this alert line, which we call a function. So this is a JavaScript function that produces a behavior which is popping up of an alert box. So this is great. And the interaction comes from that, which in JavaScript we call a event listener. And we'll learn much more about event listeners in about 2 weeks, 1.5 weeks. And an event listener does what it's named after. That is, it listens for events. In this case, it will listen for my click event. And in the case of the event, it will trigger a function. So done. JavaScript, we know everything we need to know. Not quite yet, but this is already a promising start. Okay, let's move on to in tag JavaScript. And I will, to make more space, get rid of the sidebar and also toggle soft wrap. Okay, in tag JavaScript is happening in the head tag. at least for now. Just like we used to do CSS up here on day 1 of CSS, we can do the same with JavaScript. The tags in which we write JavaScript up here is called a script tag. So I'm going to write script and enter, and it will produce these two, this opening and the closing tag for me. Also type text JavaScript, which sounds just like we want. Let's write some JavaScript. Well, all the JavaScript we know is alert, single quotes, double quotes, both work. The reason I used single quotes here is because I used double quotes on the outside. I could have also swapped inside and outside. So I'm going to say alert, hello from the script tag. Okay, now I'm going to first click OK here. Now see what happens when I save. It immediately shows the alert before the website is loaded. I'm going to refresh to see it again. So it does that as the very first thing. The reason for that is that this time, this function, this alert, is not bound to any event listener, right? It's just out here in the plain land of our JavaScript tag. That means the browser, when it gets this HTML page, it just reads, loads the style sheet, sees, notices that it is about to see some JavaScript, sees the JavaScript, runs the alert before it even goes on. In fact, when this alert comes, the rest of the website is not even loaded yet, right? So we're still up here. That means if I click OK, only then does the browser read the rest of the website. Okay, this is good to know. Finally, the best option is an external style sheet. Not style sheet, script. To do that, we'll make a new folder called, I call it JavaScript. Okay, the website keeps on alerting. In this folder, I'm going to add a file. I normally call it script.js. Where did I write this now? I normally call it script.js. You can call your files whatever you want, but make sure you have the JavaScript extension. The website keeps on alerting because it keeps refreshing, and then this alert here will be triggered. Let's get this alert out so it stops triggering here and write it as the first thing in our new external JavaScript file. That's save. This will be the last time we see this because I haven't saved this file yet after removing this. Now I save. This doesn't come anymore. This button still works. Okay, to link the JavaScript file, this is quite nice that it uses the same tags that we've used before. I just contracted them to make them smaller, but it doesn't matter. This can remain down here. The important thing is that we add a link to the external JavaScript file, which we do with the attribute source. And this is important to note. It's the same source that we know from image tags, but it is different than the href that we know from the CSS link tag. So please be aware of that. In here we type the link to our script. And now it says hello from the script tag, which means this works, but it's not very good text because this is not the script tag. Also, I notice I misspelled it. Please forgive me. Hello from the external script.js. And this again happens right at the start of our website. Hello from the external script.js. Great. There's one thing I want to point out. That is, well, first I'm going to make this smaller because I think it looks nicer on one line. That is, it might appear logical to you to put this into the head, and I agree, it is. You can also put it into the body. And I'm going to cut it and put it into the body now. And there is one really good argument to do so, which I will present to you later in this tutorial. So I think I will convince you with this article, with this argument of why to put it in the body. Until then, whether you're convinced or not, please do put it in the body because it will make this tutorial run more smoothly. And when I say in the body, I mean it's best to put it right before the closing tag of the body. That's where I personally always put the link to my JavaScript file. I recommend you to do the same right now. I'll give you a great argument as to why later on in the tutorial. Great. Let's save here, and now we move on. And the next point, we've now learned where to write JavaScript, inline, intag, external script. Next point, functions. Here it says alert. The reason it says alert there is because alert is all we know so far about JavaScript, and alert is also a function. Alert is a function that JavaScript gives us. So it's an inbuilt function to JavaScript. We already know what it does. Let's have a quick look at the syntax, how it looks like. Alert is the name of the function. These two parentheses are really the thing that actually triggers the function, or sometimes we say also call a function or execute a function. So these two parentheses are the thing that actually executes the function. And what we see in the middle here is something you'll see a lot that further customizes what the function does. I don't want to get into more detail with this for now, but know that many functions can be further customized by putting things into these two parentheses. This all is finished by a semicolon, which is typical JavaScript syntax. We call lines like this statements. You can think of them maybe as single instruction steps in our recipe for the browser. So this is an inbuilt function. What we can also do, and what we'll do a lot, is write our own functions. We call that defining our own functions. The way this works is like this. The keyword function announces, hey JavaScript, we are about to define our own function. Next, we give the function a name. This can be anything you want, except it's not recommended to call your own function alert, for example, because alert already exists. So make it a name that you think JavaScript does not already use. I'm thinking JavaScript does not yet use my function. This is followed by two parentheses and two curly brackets. So this structure, this block of code, is used to define functions. So this does not call or execute a function, but it defines a function. And we need to define a function before we can use it. What the function actually does comes here in the middle. I'm going to write a JavaScript comment here with two slashes. In here, we write the code to be executed when my function is called. So let's write some code. Let's get rid of the alert up here as well. The only JavaScript we know so far is exactly that. So let's say alert, hello from my function. And I'm going to save. And now it does not do anything, which is a good thing, because it's getting annoying that it always shows the alert right at the refreshing of the page. And it does not show anything because this function is defined, but it's not being called. To call it, one method we have already learned how to call a function is to use this onClick event listener. So instead of using JavaScript's function here, we can use my function. I'm going to save this and we test if this works. Woof. Hello from my function. That is great. We've just written our first own function and we have connected it to a button that we can now use to trigger our own function. To celebrate it, let's give it a more fun name. Let's call it Woof, because that makes sense. That means we also have to rename it here, Woof. And how about the alert says Woof? I have saved this all, and now that makes more sense. We can also, I want to show you, define as many functions as we want. So let's make another one. I'm going to call this don't click. The reason I call it this is not yet apparent. I'm going to make it apparent now, because before I define the function, I actually wanted to create a second button. I'm going to get rid of these things because I find them redundant. In the middle of the button, I say don't click, because I think this will make people want to click it. And now I define my function. Don't click will trigger another alert that says, I said you should not click this button. Save. On click equals, let's see how it is called again, don't click. And copy the name of the function, put it right here. Oh, my bad. This is much more convenient to see for you. All right, now we have two functions and two buttons. This says woof. This says, I said you should not click this button. All right. Next up, I'll give you 5 more seconds to experiment with this and finish this. Next up, I want to highlight something that we've already seen, which is the difference between doing things in a function and outside a function. In a function, they're not executed until we call the actual function. If things are outside of function definitions, they're executed the first time the script is being read and interpreted by the browser. Now, so far we only know alert. I want to show you one more inbuilt function that comes with JavaScript, which is called console.log. I'll save, and we know, because it is not in a function definition, that this was executed right now, but we don't see anything. The reason that is that we're not meant to see anything, because console.log sends a message to the so-called console. The console is hidden when we inspect our page. You already know this element tab, this one. There's also a console, and here we say woof. So this is the web developer, how's it called? Web developer tools, right? This is the inspector, which is the elements tab, and there's also the console, to which we can write messages from our JavaScript. Why would we want to do this? We want to do this mainly during development to debug things. So one common thing is to, for example, say as the very first thing in the console, say script is loaded. Just to know, all right, that we have linked it correctly, the script is loaded. Sometimes functions suddenly don't seem to be doing what we intend them to do. So we could say, to debug, then we say woof function is called. Let's see, script is loaded, great. If I click woof, it says would function is called. Of course, this is because I misspelled it. So this is a very useful space, and console log is less annoying than alerts while developing your page. So it's something you should use a lot in order to know what the browser thinks you're intending to do. The console is also interesting to look at on other websites sometimes. I want to show you this. For example, and this is the case on many websites, maybe some of you will like this. On the New York Times, when we have a look at the console, you will see something amusing. First of all, there's a lot of messages that the code is sending. The very top, it shows the New York Times logo, but it also says we are hiring. And it links directly to the text section of the job posting. So sometimes in consoles of websites you will find job postings, because they know only developers look at the console and that's who they want to hire. So that knowing the console will maybe land you a job. That is great. Moving on, script loaded, function called. Okay, what I want to do is I want to forget about these functions for a while. I'm going to highlight them all and click Command/. That means Command plus this symbol in order to comment them out. I can do this a lot to trigger the commenting. Okay, now they're gone. All there is script is loaded. What I want to console log instead is a magic word, and be careful, I'm not using quotes now. I'm console logging document. Now this console log that. Let's have a look what document is. I'm gonna make this a bit bigger, make this a bit bigger. Document seems like I can click it, and I can. And this is exactly our page. In fact, it looks a lot like the elements tag. It looks exactly the same, right? What document is a so-called JavaScript object. And what object exactly means, you will learn more about in the next class. For now, you need to know that document is JavaScript's representation of the HTML on your page. So your page is always going to be HTML, right? What we see on the page is always going to be HTML elements. JavaScript has its own representation of what is in the page, and it needs that because in JavaScript we want to manipulate things on the page and add things to the page and add interactivity to elements on the page. So JavaScript's entry point to the page is document. I say entry point because within the document, JavaScript can find every element that it ever wants to do things with. So in JavaScript, we change, manipulate, and make elements interactive. The document is the starting point because all other elements can be found within it. Let's try that. Let's try to find an element within it. So we're going to try to use the document to find an element in the document that is on the page. In other words, this is the page. Document will give us all this. Within that, we can find other elements. So let's try to find the headline. Headline has an ID, and IDs are the best way to find elements. That is because we know that only ever one element will have one ID. So there's no risk involved here that we suddenly find something else. Let's do this. So in the document, we want to get an element by its ID. The ID is headline in this case. Here. So this will first get the whole document, and then within the document it will search for an element that has the ID headline. And what I will do now and explain afterwards, I'm going to say dot inner HTML equals quote welcome to the moon exclamation point semicolon. Maybe we don't need the index.html for now to see more JavaScript. So we're getting an element from the document, and here we actually change the content of that element. If I refresh, oh, I need to save first. If I refresh, it is as if it never even said welcome before, right? It does that right after refreshing, it already says this. We know why, because this is immediately run. Right, this is not inside a function definition, but it's just in the plane, so it will be immediately run. So to repeat, the document is essentially our whole page within which we can find, get elements in order to manipulate them using JavaScript. So assuming that in JavaScript we want to handle elements, there's two ways to handle elements. Before I get to that, what I want to make clear here is that I told you before the document is a so-called JavaScript object. This is still a JavaScript object. So out of one object, we pull another object. The reason I mention this is that I want to get one thing into your head, which is on slide 57. Where are the slides? Slides are here. Slide 57 is coming up. This. So we know there's elements in HTML. These elements are represented as objects in JavaScript. So we need to be aware of that. There's elements on the HTML. Those elements are called objects in JavaScript. In order to handle elements, in order to do things with elements using JavaScript, we either need to get the HTML element and turn it into a JavaScript object, get it from here in order to handle it as an object there, which is what we do here, right? We get what is on the page into our JavaScript file, and then we can manipulate it. The other option, so one option is get something that is in HTML into JavaScript. The other option is create an object element in JavaScript and then put it onto the page, onto the document, right? Let's try that. I'm going to try this right here and you can follow. Let new element be document create element p, and I'm going to say document.body append child, append child new element. Get, I'm going to write comments here to make this more clear. Get element from the page. Get. And here we say create and append element to the page. From and to. So we don't see anything on the page yet. Let's look at the inspector tool. What have I done? Create element, document, body. Oh, this is not needed in here, but afterward. Save. In the inspector tool, in the elements tag, we now see a p tag down here. So this is on the page. We cannot see it because it does not have any content. But luckily, we have already learned how to change the content of an element using JavaScript, which is right here. So we can do the very same thing, not just to elements that we got from the page, but also elements that we created in order to go onto the page. So we say new element, inner HTML equals, does this show up on the page, question mark. And sure enough, the new p tag showed up. Where did it show up? As the very last thing in our body. First of all, that's a great success. The reason why it shows up in the body is that we say within the document, we want to select the body, and to the body, we want to append a child element, which is the element we've just created. Instead of selecting the body, we already know how to get elements from the document, so we can actually use what we've just learned. So instead of the body, we can say get element by ID and pick any element to which we want to append this. So let's have a look at our HTML. We could append our new p tag to the header, so it would show up after these buttons. So the header is the ID header. So in the JavaScript, I say document get element by ID header. So it gets the header, and to the header it appends the new element. Let's see if that worked. Does this show up on the page? Yes, it does, and it is in the header. Now this is already really advanced for the first day of JavaScript. But I think it makes sense to cover these two things today, because we've learned that HTML elements, the ones that we are already familiar with, are represented as objects in the JavaScript world, where we can manipulate them and add interactivity to them. And there's two ways to work within this idea. That is, either things that already exist as elements, we can get them as objects and do things to them, or we can create objects and then do stuff to them and then append them to the document of our page as in the form of elements. This part is called a variable, and you will learn all about it in the next class. For now, I wanted to not further talk about it. You'll learn all about it in the next class. Okay, next up, how to manipulate. What other options do we have to manipulate things on the page? Before I do that, I want to quickly add some styling to our page. So I go to the style.css and do things that you are already familiar with. You can do the same, but you can also freestyle here and choose your own styling that you want. So I'm going to select the headline because I want to change the style of the headline. Let's say color should be blue. Let's maybe leave the page open as I do this so we see the changes as I go along. Okay, the color is blue. I'll do much more. The background color of the headline can be yellow. The font family on space, it seems like it would be monospace. So now it looks like that. And let's also make it bigger. Font size 30 pixel. Okay, then I also want to change the main part of the website, just because the Earth is spinning and planets are circulating. So how about we transform the main section, the picture of the dog on the moon, and the way we transform it is we rotate it by 180 degrees. All right, this is now turned around. Lastly, after turning, it has also turned dark around the moon. So I'm going to give a background color to the body. Background color is black. Okay, I think this looks nice. Okay. Now, I will now present to you how to not change the style using CSS, but change the style using JavaScript. So I will open the two sheets, the two files side by side. I'm going to comment this one out, what I just built. So the website looks like before. And now step by step, I will recreate that. Let me quickly see if we want to keep all that. Yes, we want to keep all that. Right here, below getting an element from the page, I will apply all the styling that I do for the same element, just because I think this will structure my code better. I could also do it further below or more above. So here we'll say document.getElementById headline. Now here are the styles I want to apply to the headline. To change the style of an element in JavaScript, we need to say .style. After selecting the element, after getting the element from the page, we say .style, and then the name of the attribute that we want to change. We want to change the color style to equal quotes blue, semicolon. If I save, again, as if it was CSS, right? The moment I refresh the page, it's already blue. Now I'm going to do the same for the background color. And here I want to point something out. If I say background color, you see already the syntax highlighting here by Atom already signifies something is not quite right here. And what's not quite right here is that anything that has dashes in CSS, we need to slightly reformat in JavaScript to a so-called camel case. Camel case, I can show you to understand what I mean by this. It's no rocket science, camel case. It's called camel case because it looks like a camel. So in JavaScript, we use camel case quite a lot. One example for this is when we use attributes that are normally written with a dash. So the background color is yellow. And I'm gonna now go ahead and do this a little bit quicker. Font family, again, there's a dash. So I say font family equals monospace. And the font size, again, camel case is needed. And again, quotes are needed. 30 px. Don't forget the px, the pixel. Okay, this does all of that styling. Next up is the main. And where am I going to do this? I'm going to do this below here now. In fact, I'm sorry. I'm going to put all of the styling down here. I think this is better. Change elements. Elements style. So this is all applying for the headline. Next, I'm going to copy that, but write main to style the main. How did I want to style the main? Rotate. So the attribute is transform, right? That equal quotes, and this is the whole value. This, even though it doesn't look like it, this is one whole value. So that did the turning around of the main content. Finally, how do we select the body? We've covered it briefly before. It's a little bit of a special statement. It is not get element by ID. It could be, the body could have an ID, but a shorthand, because every HTML page ever has a body, is to just say document.body style background color equals black. And we are where we were before, except no CSS, all in JavaScript. Now, before we go on, I want to very quickly now give you the great argument that I promised before. The script right now is at the very end of the body. I'm going to take it out of here by cutting it, Command X. And I'm going to paste it in the head, which was the first spot where we tried it out. Now I'm going to save, and look at that. No changes on the website. It's the same script, it's the same link to it, it's just up there, but there are no changes. The reason for that, you could guess it. Before we used the alert up here, and the alert was being shown before anything of the page had loaded. And the same is true right now. The reason this right now doesn't do anything is that in the script, we are getting all these elements and changing their style and everything. But at the time where the browser does all that, at the time where the browser reads the script tag, all these elements do not yet exist. So this just doesn't do anything. And afterwards, all the elements are created and the old CSS is applied. That's why, given that JavaScript always does something with the page, with elements on the page, I think one way to avoid errors is to do it right here. At the last thing, now it also makes sense that I said, sorry, I don't know. Okay, I'm gonna take it out of here. Now it also makes sense that I said at the very last thing in the body because, sorry, I keep doing this. Because we want to make sure that everything on the page has loaded before the script is being executed. So that's my advice. Okay, now let's get back to the script. And I hope some of you are wondering right now how anyone in their right mind could replace this for that. Because of course this is much more typing. Who wants to do this? And you're completely right. For the use that we are doing right now, the CSS is much, much better. But just in the next step, it will not be, because now comes interactivity. What we can do is to bring our old functions back. So all of that we can wrap in a function. Let's do that. So I'm gonna just cut this function and paste it here. I'm gonna uncomment it using command /. Now I'm gonna be very careful, watch very carefully. I'm gonna delete this anti-alert. Now the function definition only opens, and I will now close it after all that. Next, I'm going to indent this all by one. You can do this by highlighting everything and then clicking Command plus this bracket, square bracket that points to the right. If you do that on highlighting something, you can indent it. Okay, now when we refresh the page, the styling is normal, but if we click don't click, then all of this gets applied. And now we have interactivity, and now it makes sense why we don't want to do this in the CSS, because JavaScript allows us to do that on a click. Great. Oh, there's one more thing I wanted to do. Oh, never mind. We could put the caption wide as well. But I think it's fine if we don't cover that. Okay. One more thing, one more trick I wanted to show you. One more thing that is not style that we changed, but another attribute I'm going to show you now. And we're going to do this now directly into the other function. This function right now doesn't do anything because it doesn't exist. So I'm going to uncomment this function and repurpose it. And you can follow me because this will be fun. I'm going to say document get element by ID equals, oh sorry, the ID is, I believe it's dog. Let's have a look. The image is dog. And the attribute that I want to change is not inner HTML, it's not something about the style, but it is the source. Because I want to click the woof button, and that should change the image. In the assets folder, I have two different images. Right now, image dog1.jpg is displayed. Let's change this source to assets / I'm going to copy this from here, equals assets / dog2. And watch this. I click on woof, and another dog appears. Now I think this is wonderful. Here it says me on the moon, but clearly this is not you anymore. So on that same click, we could say document get element by ID caption, because the p tag has the ID caption. And we can say inner HTML, same way we did before, my friend on the moon. So now on the button click, two things happen. Let's try it. Perfect. Very exciting. Okay, now comes something yet more advanced. We're learning so many things today. Here we see how we can change the source of an image that we pick from the page. We can also apply what we learned before. That is, there's two things. We can get elements from the page and do things from them. We can also create elements and then append them to the page. We did that here with a p tag, document.createElement p tag. But this time, we're going to create an image tag. Let new image be document create element, in quotes, image, and then document dot get element by ID main, because that is the div that we want to append this image to. Append child new image. And before it does something, we need to give this image a source, which is the same thing that we do here. I'm going to comment the above out because I don't want to change the first image anymore. I want to add a new image. Let's see if this works. If it looks good to you, you can write it too. Woof. Adds a new image. Isn't that amazing? Let's very quickly also adapt this to also add a new caption. Caption is a p tag. New caption, we want to change the inner HTML to this nice sentence. And then we need to append it also to the main. So now we're creating an image, setting the source, appending it to the main. Then we create a p tag, changing the inner HTML and appending it to the main. Again, variables is something we will learn about next class. Let's try this. Woof. Ta-da! Me on the moon, my friend on the moon. Okay, let's also check quickly if, let's make it smaller. If this still works, don't click. Oh, it changed the whole main part of the websites. Oh, this is also good to know. Every time we click Woof now, it will add more images. It's just like the recipe, right? If you execute the steps in a recipe, you will have a dish. If you execute the same steps again, you will have two dishes. And it's the same with JavaScript function. If I click it 20 times, I have a lot of dogs. Great. Okay, we're almost at the end. In fact, let's have a quick look at the text edit outline. Where to write JavaScript, we've covered that. Functions, the document object, that is the representation of the HTML elements within JavaScript. HTML elements in JavaScript, we can handle them by either getting them from the page, from the document, or by creating them in the JavaScript and then appending them to the document. DOM versus BOM. What is that? Okay, I want to get back to one of the words we have used most often within this script, that is document. Document, and I'm going to get a slide quickly. The idea that we have a document in which all other elements are to be found. So this concept is called the DOM, the Document Object Model. So we refer to the DOM as the elements on the page at any given moment in time. And you might be wondering, why do we even talk about the document? Because we don't have anything else, right? We might as well just say get element by ID without saying document first. But the truth is there is more things that our website can, more contexts that our website can talk to. And in fact, we've already used a different context in our page. That is the console. The console did not have anything to do with the page, right? So we see here very clearly, document is stuff that we want to do on the page. Console is stuff that we want to do on the console. There's yet another context that we can interact with. So now we know the page, we know the console, but the whole browser is yet another context. So the very window within which our web page is rendered. And to demonstrate this, I'll first quickly show you a slide. The browser is called the browser object model. So this is anything to do with the browser itself, such as the window. And just like we've used console.log and document.getElementById, we can interact with the window as well. And I want to show you this quickly because there's some great usages to be creative. What I want to show you is I'm going to add a new button first. This doesn't call any function yet. And the button says, fly me back to Earth. And I'm gonna make a function. So the first button calls don't click. The second button calls the function woof. The next button should call a function fly back. And here we say window open. And here we can open, this will open a new window with any website that we supply. The website I will supply is called wikipedia/wiki./earth. I think this will be great. Fly back. Now we need to use the function in the index. On click, call fly back. Now let's have a look at the website. There's a new button. Let's quickly run through all of them. Woof adds our friend. Don't click brings madness. Fly me back to Earth opens Earth. Wonderful. That is great. And that concludes this tutorial. So you're officially done with this tutorial with all the things I wanted to cover. I do want to add now a bonus feature. I would recommend you to maybe copy all the code, make a copy of everything you've done now, because before I add the bonus feature, I want to delete some things just to make some more space. So make sure to make a copy, maybe press pause on the video after you're done, which will be now. Let's continue. So what I will do is I will get rid of the woof button. Because I like the fly back, and the don't click I will modify. So I get rid of the woof button. And in the JavaScript file, I'm gonna get rid of the woof function. I will get rid of the create and append element. And don't worry, if some of the things you keep in, this will not hurt. I just want there to be some more space. And I will, let me think. I will get rid of everything inside the dot click for now. Maybe let's make a console log that says don't click was pressed. Okay, next I'm gonna forget about JavaScript for a second and experiment in the CSS. Because what I want to do is I want to animate the spinning of the moon as opposed to just jumping. You remember when we were rotating the main part of the website by 180 degrees? We can also animate this. So let's try this right here. First of all, I'm going to write a animation keyframe. I'm going to call them spin, and this will spin from the beginning of the animation, transform is rotate 0, and then at the end of the animation it should have transformed to 180. Now let me make sure I don't mess this up. Where? One second, I need to peek at my solution. Right here. Okay. Next, I will apply this animation to the main. And to do this, I'm going to say animation name spin. Animation duration, maybe let's say 5 seconds. Animation iteration count, I just wanted to spin it once, and then the dog is upside down. So let's have a look at the page, what this does. I'm going to refresh again to see it really. On refresh, it rotates until it's upside down, and it jumps back. Now, when I was doing this, I was worried, oh, it jumps back. I'm not sure how to solve this. But after a short Google, I found animation fill mode forwards. This is if you want to keep the last state of the animation. So now we have the animation like that. Great, but this happens not on a button press, but just in the very beginning. And I don't like that. By the way, I'm gonna also bring, because we're at the freestyle part of this tutorial, I'm gonna bring the background color black back. And the headline, I will make blue from the start. Looks better. Okay, now we want to trigger this animation rather than having it right at the beginning of this of the website refreshing. Now you might be thinking into a direction of, okay, we know how to change styles in JavaScript now. How about we just add all these styles? And I believe that would work. But instead, I want to show you something more elegant. Instead of applying this animation to the main section, I'm going to apply it to a class called spin moon. There's a class, and I'm going to apply, so the element that is having the class spin moon will now spin 180 degrees. But there is no element with the class spin moon. But on button press, we can select an element, which we already know, main, and give it a class. And here's a new learning. One way you might think of doing this, probably you wouldn't even think of this, but this you will soon be thinking of that. A problem here is that in JavaScript, just like the word alert already exists, the word class also already exists. So if we deal with class names in JavaScript, we're going to call it camel case class names. So now when we click, the class name spin moon is applied to the element with the ID main. And the theory is once it is of the class spin moon, this animation takes place. Let's try it. The grand finale. I'm going to make this bigger to get the full experience. Fly me back to Earth still works, great. But before, that works. Amazing. And now to top it all off, I'll show you one more last trick. Instead of putting a 180 degree, I mean, it's fun if the dog ends up upside down, but how about we're gonna add 360 times 5, Oh, that was really wrong. 360 times 5 plus 180. So it makes 5 full turns before it ends up upside down. So it's going to spin from 0 degree turn to 1980 degree turn. You already see it, but I want you to see it now. Don't click, click! Great. That's it for today. Thank you very much for your attention, and I will see you in a future video, or rather, you will hear me. Bye-bye.